Nation of Fit in 10, welcome to day 17 of the challenge. And reminder, next week we are going to have our Fit in 10 scan. That is our first comparative scan, your second scan overall. And we're going to run these on the Wednesday and the Thursday. I'll put up the calendar. Of course, that weekend coming up is a long weekend, so I don't want to run the scans on the weekend. So that's going to be the 18th. I think it's the 18th and the 19th next week. All right, so stay tuned for that first comparative scan coming up. Today I want to talk to you about weight training and fat loss. Weight training and fat loss. Now, a lot of people don't put these two together. Weight training is often thought as, or stigmatized as, something that is going to bulk you up. So this is simply not true. Will you build muscle mass? Yes, of course you will build some muscle mass over time. Of course, we're assuming that you're training with heavy enough weight. You will build some muscle mass, of course. When we talk about bulking, essentially what we're talking about is adding fat. And I want to remind you that no form of exercise will put on fat on your body. No form of energy expenditure will put fat on your body. If you expend energy, if you do movement, this is not going to put fat on you, right? This is ridiculous to think about. No form of movement, whether you hold weights or not, will put fat on your body. All right, so keep that in mind. Muscle mass is not to be confused with body fat. How do we get fat? We get fat by over-consuming. We get fat by over-consuming calories, that is. Okay, especially, I don't want to say the wrong calories, because a calorie is a calorie, but obviously it makes a little bit of a difference, the types of foods that we have. But again, I'm going to say it one more time. Movement with weight does not put fat on you. Okay, likewise, movement with weight doesn't all of a sudden just bulk you up. It doesn't make you all of a sudden just bigger. Can you add muscle mass? Yes. But remember, muscle is much more dense than fat tissue. And if you've ever been, well, you probably haven't, but coming from somebody who has had to lose a significant amount of body fat, well, not a significant, but a good amount of body fat. There have been sometimes I've had to lose a significant amount of body fat for a bodybuilding competition. Obviously, getting down to low body fat levels, you quickly realize how little bulk you have when you lose the fat. Okay, muscle is not a lot of that bulk that you think it is. All right, muscle is not a lot of the bulk that you think it is. Bulk is mainly fat. Okay, now what happens to a lot of people when they start weight training, especially athletes, especially those who are trying to gain weight, is they are over consuming, plus they are weight training. The reason they're doing that is because they want to add some muscle mass, they want to add some strength, but they also want to add as much body weight, within reason obviously, as they can. And so they're adding muscle and fat. They're adding muscle and fat. And when you overconsume, whether you weight train or not, if you overconsume, you will put on some muscle. Some of the weight that you gain will be muscle mass. Likewise, if you go into a calorie deficit, some of the weight you lose will be muscle mass. Now, obviously, the less of a deficit and the slower you do this, the less muscle you'll lose. But why would you weight train for fat loss? This doesn't make any sense. Well, that's not true. Okay, so let's talk about this. A couple reasons here. Well, there's many reasons, but I'll just talk about a couple. Number one, the more lean muscle mass you have, the higher your resting metabolic rate. The higher your basal metabolic rate. The more energy it will take to sustain that body mass just at rest. Okay, and on average, I have to double check this, but on average, I believe it's around 50 calories for every pound of muscle mass. All right, so more muscle mass equals more more energy required to sustain the body. So if you keep your calories consistent, but you add muscle mass, you are going to lose fat. You're going to lose fat. I'll say it again. If you keep your calories consistent, okay, assuming all your other variables are consistent, okay, your non-exercise activity and everything, you are going to burn fat because you're going to burn more calories per day. This is an investment that you're making, all right? So more muscle equals less fat, all right? Unless you're over-consuming calories, okay? Unless you're purposely trying to gain fat. Number 2, increase metabolism. Okay, now there's several ways. Now, obviously, I talked about one way. If you increase your muscle mass, you're increasing your basal metabolic rate. But also, let's not forget that from weight training specifically, all right, and when I'm talking about weight training, I'm talking about weight training, with a certain level of intensity. So this has to be with, heavier weights. We have to look at the energy that's utilized during the restorative phase. And I'm talking about the next couple days afterwards. And so this is basically returning the body to a resting state. All right, or we can think of this as, you may have heard of excessive post-oxygen consumption. This is the excess oxygen that the body needs when it goes through this restorative state post-training, after training. Okay, and this typically lasts for a number of hours, but I wouldn't be surprised too if it actually lasts a couple of days, because there's a heightened metabolic activity, because your tissues are recovering. And if your tissues are recovering, there's more stuff that's happening. If there's more stuff that's happening, this requires a higher oxygen consumption. Not to mention, when the body's going to a restorative state, we are restoring hormones, okay? We're hormone balance specifically. We are replenishing fuel stores. We are going through cellular repair, which I already mentioned. We are repairing the nervous system. Something else as well. And this is specifically with weight training only. This was recently discovered. This is found in a paper, or there was a paper that came out, I think maybe last year, maybe sooner than that, maybe 6 months ago. There's something called exerkines, and these are released specifically. These are essentially extracellular messaging molecules that are released by the exercised muscles that cause fat cells to promote lipolysis, essentially. So basically that just means breakdown of the fat tissue from the cell. Okay, so we're losing fat out of the cell. Remember, we're not losing fat cells, right? The only way we lose fat cells is to go through liposuction or something like this, which I don't recommend, and we'll talk about that in a future video. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. There's much more to say on this, but I want to just remind you that weight training doesn't make you fat. No form of exercise, no form of movement with weight, no form of movement, period, will make you fat. Whether you hold weights in your hand or put it on your back or whatever, or you sit in a machine, no form of exercise or no form of energy output. When you expend energy, you do not put on fat, okay? This is ridiculous. Okay, you get fat by over-consuming. All right, message of the day. You are a recent reflection of your past. You are a recent reflection of your past. Whatever you achieve by whatever you do, you have to keep doing that. And this applies to many things in life, not just diet and exercise. So keep that in mind. There's no such thing as going on a diet, losing the weight, and then just keeping it off by doing something else. No. You have to find a system that works for you that you can sustain. It's all about sustainability. And in order to be sustainable, you have to be reasonable. You have to be reasonable. You have to set yourself up with something that you can replicate over time and maintain that, okay? Positive energy, positive vibes, believe in yourself, for the love of God, give some gratitude. I'll talk to you all tomorrow. See you guys.